welcome all our academic staff, our lecturing staff, as well as all our tutors, as well as our administrative support staff. One of the things that we've discovered in this emergency pivot to hybrid learning, or what we call in Stellenbosch emergency remote learning and teaching, is the invaluable contribution and the work of our colleagues in our admin staff, our administrators, and our support staff, our ICT support staff. And that's why it is so important. We also have a contribution from Dr. Rudolf Kaisi, who is the ICT, head of ICT at the center, the Akrofi Christelle Institute in Ghana, who will also give a contribution. So with this, I want to welcome all of you here present. We want this afternoon to reflect on our experiences. All of us, our institution, had to make shifts, and we've learned lessons. We've made mistakes, yes, but I'm sure we've learned lessons, and we can learn from each other. And that's why this important, I think, discussion is here. We want to welcome, I already indicate, Professor Gillian Bediako, who is the Vice Rector of the Akrofi Christelle Institute in Ghana, and also Dr. Rudolf Kaisi. Welcome, Professor Bediako. Welcome, Dr. Rudolf Kaisi. I already indicated he's the Director of the Center for Early African Christianity at the Akrofi Christelle Institute, but he's also the head of ICT at the Institute, and he will also make a contribution on what ICT also can make in terms of the shift. We also want to welcome Professor Volker Kessler, who is the Academic Dean for the Gesellschaft for Bildung und Forschung in Europe, GBFE. Here we have he has got a long collaboration with UNISA, University of South Africa, online learning, and it's wonderful to welcome also you, Professor Kessler, here with us. He's also extraordinary professor at UNISA. And then we want to welcome also Professor Bert Ruben. Professor Bert Ruben is the Prodecan. He will explain that later. The Theologische Fakulteit of Theology in Bonn University. And we are so glad to have you, because he is also an extraordinary professor here at Stellenbosch University, and it's wonderful to also gain from your experience, Professor Bert Ruben. Now, colleagues, what we will do in a practical way, our chair of our academic program committee, in a sense, leading our pivot to online learning, Dr. Chantal Weber. Dr. Chantal Weber will keep an eye on the chat function. So I want to ask colleagues, while we have the presentations or the conversation, that you can make comments in the chat function. You can ask questions in the chat function. And Dr. Weber will then keep an eye and look at all the themes that are emerging, common themes, perhaps lessons learned, as well as questions that are raised throughout the conversation. And we want to ask you to use that function. And then after the presentations, after the input from our different colleagues, then Dr. Weber will, in a sense, provide us with a summary analysis of the common themes, the commonalities that emerge, but then also from our Stellenbosch perspective, also some of the key questions that are raised and lessons that we can learn. And then after that, again, we will ask our different speakers to maybe in one word just summarize for us the key takeaway lesson for the day. Is that in order? So we will now start with Professor Gillian Bediako and Dr. Rudolf Kaisi. If it's okay, I'm going to ask our colleagues to put off their videos as well as their microphones. It will only be the speakers whose video and microphone is on, and they will share their own journey. They've been collaborating, the Akrofi Kristallen Center has been collaborating with the University of KwaZulu-Natal as well as UNISA, but they also had to make the shift, the pivot to online learning, and they will share the 15 minutes. So 7.5 minutes, it will be Professor Bediako, and 7.5 minutes, it will be Dr. Rudolf Kaisi to share with us. Welcome, colleagues from Ghana, and we are excited to hear also your journey so far.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your welcome.
Over to you, and you may continue.
Yes. Thank you very much for inviting us to tell our story, essentially our story of collaborations across the continent and with South Africa, plus the shift to the hybrid mode that we have begun. I will take the history, and then Dr. Gazy will take the ICT side of our presentation. For those who may not be familiar with the Akrofi Kristallen Institute of Theology, Mission and Culture, ACI has been in existence for 33 years as an indigenous African-led institution founded by the late Reverend Professor Kwame Bediako, and has been offering graduate degree programs since 1998. ACI offers 3 programs: a 10-month MA Theology and Mission, a 2-year MTH in African Christianity, and a 4-year PhD. Our students have come from 19 African countries: the USA, Canada, the UK, South Korea, and Australia, drawn from a wide variety of denominations: Anglicans, Methodists, Baptists, Pentecostals, and Charismatics, as well as Presbyterian. But ACI began life in the 1980s as a mission-focused gospel and culture training center for the Presbyterian Church of Ghana, broadening gradually to serve more ecumenically. The focus of ACMC, as it was then, was on training church personnel and members to be more contextually rooted and mission-minded. And a significant discovery here was that operating more intentionally in indigenous languages, people's heart language, was crucial for Christian nurture in depth, and that the mother tongue scriptures afforded fresh theological insights, especially through the lines of connection from the language with indigenous culture that were a key to personal and cultural transformation. Now, ACMC was also one institutional focus of an Africa-wide network, the African Theological Fellowship, comprising like-minded African Christian scholars, ministers, mission practitioners, who shared the view that theological education needed to be more contextually focused so as to make it more relevant to African church life. Some of the institutions represented by these members were also involved in hosting ATF conferences and workshops. Sub-regions were West, East, Southern, Francophone, and finally Lusophone Africa. The ATF ran a network series of training workshops on institutional development and curriculum development in different locations, as well as periodic conferences in which all sub-regions participated with research papers. The papers from later conferences were published in our Journal of African Christian Thought. Now, in the mid-1990s, the Board of Trustees of ACMC felt it would be a natural development to feed this learning into accredited studies, and the research preparation for and learning from 10 years of grassroots interactions became foundational for shaping the academic curriculum. Providentially, within the ATF network, there was a similar desire to feed the learning from network interactions into theological training and curriculum development. And this was part of a ferment going on in the wider network of two-thirds world theologians called Infomit. The idea of our curriculum workshops that we initiated in the late mid-1990s was to share the vision and rationale for curriculum redesign. And the idea was both to sensitize theological educators as to the need for a revised curriculum distinct from what had been received from the West, and also to invite participation in the redesigning project so as to provide an expanded theological perspective that included issues of gospel and culture in the service of mission and Christian nurture. Now, the question as to how a research and training center could be converted into a degree awarding institution resolved itself into the need to find a host validating institution for what was already taking shape as a viable curriculum at MTH level. At that time, post-apartheid era, South African university institutions were under pressure to Africanize their curricula. And the School of Theology, University of Natal, was one such, and had come to acknowledge that they did not have the expertise to do it. Hence, when Dr. Tony Balcom, a South African member of the ATF, who was at the time principal of Ethos in Pietermaritzburg, which was affiliated to the School of Theology, arranged a meeting between SOT and the ATF, that meeting proved to be a providential coming together that resulted in the ATF Master of Theology degree in African Christianity, with ACMC as the facilitating partner institution. One semester of the first year coursework being held in each institution, but the whole operated by the ATF through ACMC. With scholarship support from one of ACMC's partner churches, for 6 years from 1998, the University of Natal validated the degree, while in Ghana, the National Accreditation Board provided the necessary local accreditation. The PhD program started the following year in 1999. This collaboration worked well for 6 years, and those who started completed successfully at MTH and PhD levels, student taking 1 semester of the year-long coursework at each institution. Kwame Bediako, my husband, and I were made full honorary faculty members of the SOT and taught a significant portion of the 3 courses offered in the Natal semester. Our ATF visiting faculty were also recognized by the university. Conversely, Dr. Balcom and any other Natal faculty involved in the coursework, whether in Pietermaritzburg or in Akropong, were recognized as adjunct by ACMC, and all were recognized as dissertation supervisors in both institutions. In 2005, ACMC was sufficiently well established to be granted its own charter, and its name changed to reflect this, and ACI continued offering the degrees independently of UKZN, as it now was, from 2006. Now, this independence came about because of the changes that were brought about by the merger of the University of Natal with the University of Durban-Westville in 2004, which had the side effect of demoting theology and theological method in favor of religious studies and an increasingly secularized interpretative framework and methodology. And we saw firsthand the difficulties our South African theology-trained colleagues had in accommodating the new environment. The Charter enabled us at ACI to retain the theological focus that we consider best fitted to the formation needs of African church personnel and lay mission practitioners, while retaining high standards of academic excellence. And we at ACI regretted the parting of the ways. And in personal terms, there's still nothing but goodwill on all sides. But we felt the Africa-facing focus was so crucial, we needed to safeguard it. What about learning through this history of collaboration? Two types of collaboration meet here. The first, with the ATF, was a pan-African network of shared vision, where qualified persons collaborated to design a new master's degree program to suit African realities. The second, with the SOT, was a conjunction based on a mutuality of needs. The SOT needing to indigenize its theological offerings, yet not having the expertise at the time to do it, and ACMC, ATF seeking an institutional validation for its programs. The SOT recognized the value of what the collaboration could contribute and was willing to learn from the experience. And ACMC was appreciative of the South African link, lending contextual depth to the Africa-wide vision of the MTH in African Christianity. As noted above, this conjunction unfortunately became increasingly problematic following the merger with Durban Westville, and the change from School of Theology to School of Religion and Theology in 2004, which we came to realize was part of a process of UKZN as a whole, orienting itself firmly in line with what institutions in the West were doing. Hence, the programs, when we got our charter, they became exclusively ACI programs. From all this, we can affirm from our experience that networking across the continent offers great scope for a sharing of cultural and religious commonalities, as well as learning from distinct regional differences and working together towards shared goals. South Africans of all races have taken the African Christianity coursework and degrees, and from their testimony, found its perspective liberating. Also, institutional mutuality is important, and I would say especially so with respect to the peculiar situation of South Africa. Yet our experience is that a collaboration born of mutual appreciation, such as we had with the School of Theology, can help towards integration, towards a breaking down of barriers and prejudices, leading towards, hopefully, a Christian witness and scholarship that are honoring to God and help build up his church. As you will see, our collaborations so far have been on site. Dr. Gazy will take up the story concerning our recent move to hybrid mode, and I'm sorry if I've gone on a bit long. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bediako. So at the end of last year, ACI had already been preparing to invest more in their mixed or hybrid mode of course delivery and experience. And discussions up until then were on how best to enhance our teaching and learning with appropriate technology. Now, during a consultation organized by the Overseas Council International sometime early 2019, our registrar, the Dean of Accredited Studies, and myself, we met a team from the Horizon Education Network based in Grand Rapids in Michigan. Now, Horizon have been providing training and resource for theological institutions in a number of countries to offer either a hybrid or a full online program. And HEN uses a customized Moodle platform for its partner institutions. So ACI eventually has partnered with Horizon, and we have already received some training online in thinking through content and pedagogy for online delivery of courses. But in between that time, we also subscribe to the Google Suite for Education, which is free for qualifying institutions. Now, the range of Google tools that we have has facilitated communication among staff and students, especially during this COVID time. Two primary tools that Google offers, the Google Meet and the Classroom, have helped us to offer some form of hybrid online mode for delivery of our courses, both at the MA and then the PhD levels. Our mode of delivery is not a complete or a full online approach, but if you like, a modified version in the hybrid and then the full online modes. And quite obviously, we had to go this way following the initial restrictions with the COVID lockdown that we had in this country. Now, at the MA level, students are given pre-recorded lecture audio a day before to listen and make notes before an hour video interaction session. And the video sessions are also recorded to help students who may have internet connection challenges as a way for them to catch up. At the MTH PhD level, during their coursework, the full lecture is either in person because of the small numbers or online. There are no pre-recorded audio lectures. And the Google Classroom in both instances enable us to share digital content in terms of course materials and so forth. Now, quickly, I'll run through some lessons we've learned and challenges as well, and maybe also some prospects. Now, there's a challenge of the variable internet connectivity for some students. There's also the challenge of accessing the library remotely for relevant resources. We're currently working on that. There's also the issue of copyrights with audio lectures shared with students. Reproduction in this case is a bit uncontrollable. We have a draft policy guideline for online activities we are working on to rectify. And this is related to the requirements from our National Accreditation Board for online teaching. There's also the challenge of having students to work from home rather than the conducive environment that the Institute offers with access to the library. And some of the prospects, we've realized that the flexibility with this form of hybrid mode of delivery at the MA level enable us to also conduct examinations on site or at designated centers for students who are outside the country or different parts of the country. We've been thinking through also an alternative mode of assessment since most of the classes are online. We've been thinking through how best we could translate the on-site examination, in-person examination to an online mode of assessment. Now, we've also realized that we had greater participation from our international members in our lectures and seminars via our video meetings. So some faculty members have been able to teach either from England or as far away as Australia. And students in Nigeria, Cameroon, US, England have also been able to participate in respective activities. And obviously, this opens the opportunity for inter-institutional conversations and activities such as we are having now online, and faculty and students can participate in joint sessions and so forth. And I must say that we are still also having to think through the best approach and practice for online activities as a theological institute, which is keen on keeping both spiritual and academic intellectual formation. And now I'll conclude by way of offering my own reflection, observation as a member of faculty, as well as an ICT expert, that certainly a form of online learning has come to stay with us. for all educational institutions. And there are various discussions on theological and spiritual formation and the use of ICT. But ultimately, I think that each institution ought to decide its own approach to the use of ICT in its theological education. Especially in Africa, there is a need for collaboration on some common grounds, but in such a way that each institution can maintain and achieve their distinctiveness. And this requires, obviously, further dialogue between the availability of ICT tools and then the institute's foundational ethos, what defines the institute or the department if it's in a bigger university. So ACI, like most institutions, has been able to have such conversation consciously and openly because of the situation we find ourselves, and we are taking advantage of that. In our case, also, there's a helpful meeting of the older and younger colleagues in the discussion. So we have Professor Bediako and myself, representative of the older and younger generations, on discussions on ICT and technological education. So I'll leave it here. I hope we stayed within our time, and we will be ready for some further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bediako and Dr. Gaisi. We will now immediately jump to, and later we will come back to some of the comments or questions that might emerge. So we are going to immediately jump to Professor Volker Kessler. He is the Academic Dean of the GBFE network of theological institutions across Europe. And he will share a bit about their collaboration, but also their shift and their experience in hybrid mode learning. Professor Kessler.
Hi, Professor Nell. I have a colleague. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you. We can hear you, and we can see you.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, the GBFE is a network of 13 colleges, mainly in Germany, but also in Switzerland, Denmark, Norway, and Russia, actually. And we have a collaboration with UNISA for 20 years now. The collaboration is on postgraduate studies. That is, we have more than 300 master doctor students in the last 20 years. So we are quite happy about that cooperation. Now, concerning the hybrid teaching, we have different colleges, and of course they cope with it with different ways. So, for example, in my case, I work for an Academy for Christian Leadership. So, actually, in March, I should have taught a course in Paraguay. So, in Paraguay, but I wasn't able to go there, and then we switched over to Moodle and Zoom. We already have some experience with the learning platform Moodle, which is quite convenient to put in learning material. And then we have a combination with Zoom. So usually we would say we have a preparation phase where students have to, they have 6 weeks to prepare, and then we would meet at a certain place in Germany or whatever, or Germany for 3-4 days. And also due to Corona, we changed that to Zoom meetings. So we still have these 3-4 days, but we do not meet at the same place. We have 3 days together with Zoom. Also, you have to teach a bit differently. So you have to, for example, you have to make more breaks, because it's very difficult to listen to Zoom a whole day. But I was quite impressed, especially the community. So usually one of the difficult things with distance teaching is how do you create skills? Now in my case, I always had 9-10 students. So if you are together with these students for 3 days, even via Zoom, you create a sort of community. So, for example, in one case, the students said, well, they would miss that chat. And I said, okay, that's no problem. The teaching was over, was 6 o'clock, okay, but I leave the room open, so you can just chat and I leave the room and can have a chat as usual. So that was quite interesting for me. And of course, you have to rethink, to restructure your teaching, but it also creates new opportunities. So just the other day, I had a course with 5 people, and one guy was sitting in Nepal, another lady from Thailand, a lady from South Africa, and 2 students from Germany. So 5 persons all over the world, and we had a teaching together. So I think that's also one of the new opportunities. Yeah, I wanted to contribute. Any questions to that?
We will come back to your contribution. We will reflect on it, and then as we gather, then we will allow for some engagements. But thank you for that input as well. Okay, so now we're going to move to Professor Bert Ruben. If you could also unmute and in a sense unmask yourself, Professor Ruben. Welcome. Professor Bert Ruben, from your perspective, he is based, I think you are currently in Köln, but you are actually originally from Belgium. So, over to you, and we would love to hear also your experience and your perspectives. Thank you from your context.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dean. I hope you can hear me from this side.
Yes, we can hear you clearly, and we can see you clearly as well.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be part of this interesting group of people talking about how we can deal with the challenges that really come to us in these unconventional times, so to say. Thank you for the invitation. And the point is actually that I'm on the road for the moment, like the Dean said, between Belgium and Germany. I live in Belgium. I teach in Germany. I'm on my way now to Germany. I'm in the midst of the city of Cologne, which is a beautiful city. And I found a restaurant where I could sit at ease and have this conversation with you, actually from a very virtual point of view, so to say. I'm on my road to my faculty of theology at the University of Bonn in Germany. And during the whole pandemic up till now, we had to shift and to change our courses into home office courses. And that is had a huge impact on what we did up till now. Let me just share with you some thoughts about how we proceeded. In the beginning of March, when the pandemic started, actually, and when the lockdown was really at stake as well in Germany as in Belgium, in my country, I stayed at home and I started conversations with my students through actually delivering them PowerPoints and voiceovers for their courses. But very soon I actually saw that they were not connected anymore. Yes, I heard them asking for more interaction. I just delivered them the PowerPoints and the information and the reading materials in scheduled time, so to say, at the time they were scheduled for that course. But they were unsatisfied with that. They wanted to have connection. They wanted to have meetings. They wanted to actually meet with each other and with the professor. So I started more intensively adding my Zoom sessions to that course and to all the courses that I offered my students. So not only, let me say, offering them material, but every 2 weeks I offered them also the chance to have a Zoom conversation on the materials. And there it was clear to me that in many cases these home office courses and these online courses are not so much about conversation and not so much about um, appropriation of the materials, but much more about just delivering the materials. I heard about so many colleagues who said just, well, I deliver my stuff and then that's it. So people need conversation. People need the actual presence of the other, even though it is a virtual presence. It's very strange, actually. So I started more intensively to have the conversation with my students in Zoom sessions, which actually helped me to understand their needs and their longings and their anxieties better. Also my own longings and needs and anxieties as a professor, to understand them and to be with them. Because the whole time, from March up till, you could say, up till July, August, was a time without actual presence, without the actual embodied conversation with the other. So we had this Zoom conversations, and I must say that was a real challenge, but also a real blessing, I must say. So I see 3 points actually in that sort of experience around Zoom. 3 points that made me think about theological learning processes more intensively, and the way they are dealt with in a virtual context. The first point is the need for slowification. So they got a lot of stuff from other professors in other courses, and they asked me, please, less will be more. Please give us less than more. We need less stuff than more stuff. So there was a need for slowification, for what they call in the German religious educational theory, elementarization. The real elements, the basic stuff, the real basic elements which are needed to understand a field like Christology, like a field like eschatology, a field like creation, a field like just social ethics, and so on. Just they needed more insight in the elementary issues of the fields. That's one thing. So I needed to slowify my course, which is a good thing, I think. In every case, when you teach, you just slowify. And you say, well, let's make a break. Let's think. Let's see how this can be appropriated by you as a learner. That's the first thing. The second thing is the need for hospitality. And that's a strange thing, actually, in a virtual learning context. Because we people, we learn in the presence of the other, in the presence of the actual other who is present sitting next to me as a fellow in the classroom, or talking to me as a friend on the street. We learn from each other in embodied learning, in the encounter with others. Recent research has shown us that a need for hospitality, for mutual hospitality, even linguistic hospitality, which is a term coined by Paul Ricoeur, the French philosopher Paul Ricoeur, linguistic hospitality is much needed in learning processes, in theological learning processes. You need time to address the issue with your fellow learner, to be involved in his hospitable context, and to learn from his language, from his linguistic hospitality. And from your side, you're asked to also to offer your thoughts about what you find important in your theological approach to reality. So hospitality was a second thing. And I saw many students on the screen in Zoom sessions hiding, hiding, putting themselves behind the black screen, devisualize themselves, not be present because they were anxious. They were perhaps angry too. They felt insecure. They felt shy. So we need to challenge our students to come to the fore, to open up the screen if possible, and to put themselves in front of us, and so that we have the conversation in the presence of each other. This is the second point. The first one was slowification. The second point, learning in the presence of the other. And the third one is the need for performance, for narration, for storytelling. Incredible. So many people want to talk about where they are how they relate to Corona worldwide. It's crazy, you know. I'm now for the moment I'm in Germany. The situations from Belgium to Germany, only 200 kilometers away from each other, are so different. So, but at the same time, we are in the same boat, in the same storm, so to say, all over the world. What does it mean for our theological learning? What does it mean for our theological narration? So there's a huge challenge and a huge invitation, actually, globally, to start that conversation. I'm actually also very hopeful and very delighted about it. Let's start that conversation with each other. I saw that, for instance, in my course on homiletics, on preaching with my students. They started to think about how they could address a gospel story in a homiletical way to their fellow listeners on the screen. So they started about thinking, how can we do this in a performative and narrative, sound and convincing way? I was flabbergasted actually by my students who were so creative and so wanting to talk to others and to address others and to face others, really face them. That brings me to my final point, really my final point now. What about the material conditions? Can you imagine even that in Germany, some of my students were not able to connect to the internet? Can you imagine? So we're thinking globally, we're thinking about Africa, we're thinking about America, we're thinking about Asia, but we're also thinking about Europe, Western Europe. Some of my students were not able to connect with good hardware to the internet, with good internet connection to the internet. So some of them were disconnected, were not present, were not allowed to take part in that ongoing conversation that was so important to us all. So I'm thinking about how this also is addressing the issue of social justice, of digital justice, if I may, to see how we can make the web and the conversation and the teams like this one here more accessible for all of us. These are some of my small just remarks about teaching from my perspective in the springtime and the summertime of Europe, of Western Europe. Thanks for listening to me. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Prof. Bert, Ruben, and our colleagues, Professor Volker Kessler, Professor Gillian Bediako, as well as Dr. Robert Geisy, for sharing your stories, your agonies, perhaps also the dreams, but also in a real way. I think Prof. Bert was speaking about storytelling. In a sense, we were sharing stories. Now, colleagues, Dr. Weber, I can imagine, is sitting there ready. I want to perhaps open up, Dr. Weber, if it's okay with you. First, maybe an opportunity. We've got a few minutes left. Then I will open up the possible opportunity for colleagues to perhaps raise their hand if they want to make a contribution, perhaps share their own experience of making the shift, their own agonies, perhaps also their own joys and moments of let's call it epiphany, moments where they felt, wow, things are happening here. So if there's anybody now that wants to use the opportunity, then feel free to just raise your hand, and then we'll take it from there. Yes, Professor Foster, Dion Foster.
Reggie, thanks. You can always count on me to have something to say. Colleagues, thanks for the really insightful and thoughtful presentations. It was wonderful to listen to each of you, and particularly to reflect on the historical background. And there are two things that strike me about what I heard today. The one is that in each of what you have shared, there's been the sense that there was a moment of invitation, or perhaps urgency, or a need respond to what was happening in the context. And I sense very much that we are at that point now again. You know, the world has changed, I think. I think the kind of free and safe togetherness that we thought we had will be changed forever. And so, yeah, I was also just struck, particularly by the last presentation, about, you know, what it might mean to be in safe and hospitable places where we can learn from one another going forward. And I think, you know, the kind of opportunity that digital engagement offers us is very promising. But, you know, as people like Giorgio Agamben and others have been writing from Italy, it's also not adequate enough. And we have to think about how we maintain that tension of contact and safety in relation to what the moment demands of us. So thanks for really evoking a lot of thoughts and ideas. I appreciate it.
No, thank you, Dion, for your input. Julie Claessens, Prof. Julie Claessens, over to you. You've had some experiences in the past as well on hybrid online learning, so wonderful to hear from you as well.
Yes, thank you, Dean. I taught for 6 years online in United States before moving back to Stellenbosch. So I've had sort of experience of that, the good and the bad and the ugly and the joyous and the complexity of that, yeah, in the past. And some of it, you know, was perpetuated, and technology has become better, and, you know, there's different things you can do now that we couldn't do at that time. So yeah, again, the complexity of it. So yeah, so I just want to say, and I mean, I really appreciate the presentations and sort of showing some of that, and also the possibilities. And, you know, I've also experienced some of that, you know, where students really shined into sort of in some of the participation and sort of really giving themselves for it, and it was really enriching at times for me. But what I do notice now, I mean, this year has really been a stressful year for many of us, for lecturers, but also for students. And I really see many students who are complaining sort of mental health issues, of loneliness, of missing the structure, of missing coming to the seminary, of over the quick school, yeah, I mean, the social isolation is really getting to people. And I know it's getting to some of us. I mean, as lecturers, I mean, we are social animals. We need to be, I mean, I want to be in the presence of my students. So I'm just thinking about that. And I think Dion said it also well, you know, how do we, the balance between that? And of course, this was emergency teaching, and we know we have to do this in order to help students to graduate and to keep on going. And I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, just thinking of how the world has changed and how people speak about the new normal, and this is going to be how it's going to be in future. I would just want to make a plea for, you know, the embodiment, because we miss a lot of things with being so isolated, of being in our own homes. We miss the togetherness. But yeah, so that's just from my side, and the impact on so many students as well as lecturers.
No, absolutely. No, thanks, Julie. Thanks for that reminder. But indeed, this is the reality, and I think some of our colleagues spoken about this. Some of us feel it's in our bodies, you know, and of course our students as well. So thank you for that input. I'm going to give over now to Dr. Chantal Weber. Dr. Weber, I see you still here. Maybe just in terms of some of the common themes, what is it that you've heard? And as she is unmuting her mic and showing her face, just to say that Dr. Weber has been, in a sense, spearheading, leading the shift within the faculty here at Stellenbosch. So from your side, we would love to hear what you've heard, how you've been challenged, perhaps also, but also some confirmations, perhaps, on what has been shared so far. Dr. Weber.
Yeah, thank you so much to all the presenters so far and all the colleagues. I thought, yeah, let me just kind of pull together some of the things I'm reading or hearing about. I think, Prof. Pediaco, I think the one question that will stay in my mind after today, it's on the decolonization realm, is that you said South African colleagues found it quite difficult to contextualize when you guys started your process, and then also how that worked out.
May I correct you? Their problem was with the transition to the School of Theology and School of Religion and Theology, not with what we were doing. We've been doing it for years. The problem with the shift to accommodating sociology of religion and the shift in intellectual framework and methodology from a school of theology to a school of religion and theology.
Yeah,
that was the issue, not with us. They were very happy with what we did.
Yeah.
They also joined in. I mean, so that's yeah.
Yeah, you also mentioned the difficulty in terms of the South African institutions' allegiance to the West. That also came up, which is, I'm just saying, those are some of the things we've just gone through the process, or we have just started the process of decolonization here at Stellenbosch. And so I just wanted to say I'd remember it because it seemed to be similar connections there. As well. And I just wonder what you guys call that process. Was it decolonized? Was it Africanized? Was it something else? But you could respond to that when I'm done here. And then, yeah, just some common points, colleagues. It seems like, yeah, a lot of the online tools, Google Classroom, Zoom, Moodle, yeah, we also, Prof. Kessler, we have something called, we use SunLearn, but it's also part of the Moodle system. But I think for us at Stellenbosch, we've been using Microsoft Teams. And I think some of the conversations had around there, and I'm sure you guys have had it as well, when making a choice for the online tools, the importance of, as Dr. Geizy said, copyright and intellectual property issues. So even there we found here at Stellenbosch that the choice of online tool should not just align to the ethos of the institution, as you say, Dr. Geizy, but also it should align to issues of copyright and intellectual property and some of the challenges. So just in terms of the online tools there. And then various connections between your 3 contexts and ours, as I've mentioned already, the decolonization and Africanization debate is now highlighted. Hybrid mode, it sounds as though most of you have been using what you call hybrid mode, the class and online space. Stellenbosch has embarked on that now, but it seems also that most of you do it for postgraduate studies. And that's the case with Stellenbosch too. In fact, our faculty is the only faculty at this point trying to put our undergrad program, Bachelor of Theology program, into a hybrid modality. The formal term for online teaching we've used here is emergency remote teaching, which is short ERT. I've already mentioned copyright. I think that seems to be a common thing. Yeah, when students record lectures or record themselves and so forth, what happens to that? Where does the copyright lie? Although we also know that that has been the case. Students sit in the physical classroom before and record us without us even knowing, but that has come up too. Another connection point between our 4 institutions seems to be the issue of, well, I'm not sure, Kessler, Prof. Kessler, if you've had it, but the issue of data and internet. Bert, I was waiting for you. I initially had the connection point on African institutions there, and then you said, well, you guys also have it in Germany. So data and internet, and that again, the tool we use, the platform we use, we've learned so much around the amount of data it takes when using specific tools, and I'm sure you guys have done the same. It seems like workload and pace have been a common point between especially the University of Bonn, Bert, and us here. but I'm sure the colleagues would agree on the other ends too. Not just for staff, fast pace, high workload in terms of managing these things, but also for students, as my colleague Julie highlighted there. And so I think one of the things, I'm not sure what it looks like in Ghana, but South Africa has also unfortunately had to deal with load shedding, where our electricity has not helped us in the process of using the internet. So load shedding has been a big thing. It's calmed down for now, but that has then also, Dr. Geisi, you mentioned that you guys have hybrid mode, but your tests and exams are physical. For us, everything has been online, and that has then had implication for our load shedding periods. When there's no electricity, then it kind of has interrupted assessments. And then, of course, just to close off, we've heard now from colleagues from South Africa around issues of wellness, issues of fatigue, online fatigue. But yeah, thank you, Bert, for bringing it together for us in terms of the importance of engaging in what the meaning of doing theology online looks like. I'm not sure if our colleagues have done that. I for sure haven't, in terms of having these discussions with students. So we're having our theological engagement online. What does that mean to you? So you've kind of flagged that. Your theological terms, which we'll remember, slowification, hospitality, embodied learning, and yeah, definitely digital justice will also be remembered. So yeah, shame. I see the Dean is explaining what I mean by load shedding there. Our electricity provider cuts electricity to particular areas, and that, of course, has been a problem. So that's just a summary from my side, Dean. I hope it helps.
No, thank you, Dr. Weber. We've got these unique South African terms that we use, and often we, but I've and the rest of our continent, I think Dr. Geisi have indicated that is a problem that is experienced in certain countries as well. Colleagues, I'm just going to ask our guests in one line, as a conclusion, the response from what Dr. Weber shared, also from the colleagues, Professor Foster as well as Professor Claassen. Maybe just one line, what is it that you want us to take away from this conversation? Professor Bediako and Dr. Geisi.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed being in this discussion. It's been illuminating. I think there have been a lot of commonalities. Well, can I make 2 points? In terms of community, what we do, we hold our weekly devotions online. And I find that helps significantly. It doesn't deal with all the problems that have been highlighted, but it helps. And then secondly, the issue of linguistic hospitality. In Africa, we have a wonderful opportunity here, such a range of languages, scriptures in so many languages, that needs to be pursued more intentionally, I think, what the insights could be coming out of that. Thank you.
All right. So I think that, and thank you very much again also for this opportunity. And I've learned a lot again, particularly from the last presentation. But all these reminds me of indeed our common humanity and the need to support and work with one another for us as Christians in pursuing God's agenda in our various institutions. So I think I'm happy with this talk and the need for collaboration to learn from one another, and seeing that our problems and challenges are common, are similar, and so perhaps we can find some strength together in designing some responses and some solutions to help us in what we do. So I think that's what I can say for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Geisi. I just, in line with your contribution, Dr. Peter Nagel also indicated that we can also explore the possibilities of VR, virtual reality technology, and maybe that's for another conversation. Thanks, Dr. Nagel. Professor Kessler, last comment from your side, and then Professor Bert Ruben.
Yeah, thank you for being part of your community. And I think that's also the crucial issue. How do we create community with the digital learning? But I also noticed that different people might have different definitions of community. So for me, my generation, we would always say, should we meet digital or should we meet in reality? And I noticed that sons, my daughter, they don't make that distinction. For them, meeting digital is meeting reality. This is a real deity. Maybe we have to redefine what we understand with community.
Absolutely. It's our definition of community.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Kessler, and we thank you for that important, I think, a distinction that you introduced also to us. Professor Bert Ruben, we've been hearing you, so now let's hear you more.
It's amazing, actually, Mr. Dean and dear Reggie, to be so far away from you, actually, and to be so connected at the same time. I feel in a way, I feel very emotional in a way, and vulnerable, because the thing is, we are on the same planet, south and north, excuse me, and we're in the same planet and in the same vulnerable boat, so to say, in this storm of corona, or in the same storm, perhaps, who knows. But the issue is really, and that was one of the central elements that Dr. Weber gave us, actually, to understand the situation, is that we need to overcome social isolation in many ways. So even if the digital tools are helping us in this way, let's continue the conversation in that respect. I think it's helpful to do it that way. So I'm very glad with this conversation, actually, with your Dean's Hour and your presentation, the possibility of coming together and doing this.
No, thank you.
Yes, and as you can see, my internet is up as well, even in Germany.
No, that even in Germany. Colleagues, wonderful. Dr. Weber, just thank you, Prof. Ruben and Bert. Just also made another comment there that we can reflect on weekly online devotions, reading together in different languages, reminder of our common humanity and vulnerability, and the importance of the language used in terms of whether we, digital or even reality. But colleagues, I want to thank you. I want to thank our guests, and I think it's, I hope, and I think I speak for everybody, that the sharing of stories and the sharing of the experiences, I think that's also valuable. It builds community. So thank you for your time, for the hour. And next week we will do it again with the different perhaps conversation partners, but we will continue to nurture this community. So all the best for the rest of the day, and thank you to our colleagues from Ghana, from Germany, in between Belgium and Germany, the in-betweenness. Thank you, our colleagues from Stellenbosch. Dr. Weber, thank you for your input this afternoon, and hope you have a wonderful day for the rest of the day. All the best there.